everyone. Welcome to NBCLX on this glorious Friday. It is July 17th. I'm Jo Beth DeVera.
And I'm Tab Flipkin. We begin with yet another scary milestone in the United States as the coronavirus continues to spread. More than 75,000 new cases were reported yesterday, breaking the single-day record once again for the 11th time in the past month. And according to the New York Times,
10 states reached record high death rates this week. Florida, Texas, and Arizona are the three major states that have seen its numbers shoot up over the past few weeks. But states like Alabama, Idaho, Utah, Oregon, Hawaii, Montana, and South Carolina also broke single-day death records this week, proving that the virus is reaching places that previously had a low case count.
And the topic of reopening schools is a topic that we've dedicated this entire week to talking about. And in a White House press briefing just yesterday, the press secretary said that the science was in support of opening schools.
Yeah, the president has said unmistakably that he wants schools to open, and I was just in the Oval talking to him about that. And when he says open, he means open and full, kids being able to attend each and every day at their school. The science should not stand in the way of this, but we really would like to see schools open. As has been clear, we don't think our children should be locked up at home with devastating consequences when it's perfectly safe for them to go to school.
Now, experts in early childhood learning all seem to agree that reopening schools would benefit students. They say going back to school fulfills educational, social, and health roles that are vital to a child's development. But in order for districts to do so safely, schools need the resources. The U.S. Government Accountability Office suggests that 54% of public school districts are in need of updating or replacing facilities in their buildings. And another 41% should replace heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in at least half of their schools, which is especially important as research is beginning to suggest that the coronavirus may be airborne.
But most districts, they're already strapped for cash. Data from the Association of School Businesses Officials International, they break down the cost estimates for school districts looking to reopen this fall. And please keep in mind, these numbers are based on an average size district. Now, cleaning and disinfectant costs, they are in the tens of thousands, with just hand sanitizer adding almost 40 grand to that. Now, a single deep cleaning after a confirmed case is estimated to cost nearly $20,000. Staff implementing safety protocols is one of the more expensive measures, more than $1 million going towards custodial staff, nurses, and screenings at buses. Now, PPE is estimated at nearly $200,000, and then transportation and childcare is another $250,000. So an average district is already looking at spending almost $2 million in order to reopen.
Yeah, and you can see why funding is one of the major barriers when it comes to reopening schools. Another coronavirus relief bill is in the works, and it is said to include somewhere between $50 to $100 billion for elementary and secondary schools. But whether or not that money is conditional to reopening hasn't been said. The amount of money a school has, it really does seem to make a big difference in whether or not schools choose to reopen. An article from the New York Times shows that private schools around the country are making the decision to reopen in communities where public schools aren't. One private school in particular over in Honolulu, Hawaii, for example, is able to keep an epidemiologist on staff and install thermal scanners in the hallways. Punahou School already had 2 teachers per 25 students, making it easier to meet public health rules for smaller groups. And Punahou, by the way, is where President Barack Obama went to school over in Hawaii.
And survey data from advocacy group Parents Together shows that remote learning is also hugely impacted by income. Now, families making less than $25,000 a year were 10 times more likely to have children doing little to no remote learning. Now, they surveyed 1,500 people around the country and discovered some big gaps in education based on income levels. Now, 32% of the lowest income families say students didn't have a device or had to share their device with siblings. 11% said that their schools just didn't offer distance learning materials, and 33% of lower income parents are concerned with their kids' future. 30% of low-income parents of kids with special needs, they also reported that they didn't have any additional support even before remote learning.
And school reopening plans this fall are showing how the pandemic is widening those gaps. K through 12 schools were given more than $13 billion from the original coronavirus relief bill, but the Secretary of Education insisted that money be split between public and private schools. And now states are facing budget shortfalls and there isn't enough tax revenue coming in because of all the lockdowns.
And in Illinois, the governor warned parents to prepare for a school semester unlike any other. The state has more than 159,000 cases that are confirmed. And according to the daily data from the New York Times, Illinois has started to report right around 1,000 new cases a day. And in one Chicago suburb, an outbreak was just confirmed after dozens of young athletes started sports camps. 36 Lake Zurich High School students tested positive for the coronavirus, resulting in the school suspending those camps. And the health department says it's likely the camps were not the cause of the outbreak, as data in the area shows a growing number of young people are infected.
There were several social gatherings leading up to the start of these camps where students were likely exposed. And we were just coming out of that 4th of July weekend. So, it's kind of a recipe for a lot of people to potentially be infected.
Just think, people should, be a little smarter because they know just how easy it is they can catch it. And like all these people, all the young guys just going out and partying is like, that's a great place to catch it.
Now, California is one of the states being hit the hardest right now, with more than 365,000 cases reported. Data from the New York Times shows it reported more than 9,200 new cases just yesterday. And today, California Governor Gavin Newsom is expected to make an announcement on whether schools should reopen for in-person classes this fall. Previously, that was a decision made by the districts.
And there was one school district who voted to open schools without masks or social distance requirements. Now, that created a rift between the school board and the administrators. Now, for context, the positivity rate in Orange County, California, right now is 14%. Epidemiologists say that this is mid to high risk, and opening a school in an area where there is already inadequate testing poses a great risk. The superintendent of the Orange County Department of Education called the push to reopen a form of malpractice and urged people in the area to move past politics and protect children.
That's the number one thing that parents want across the country, for their kids to be safe. And it's unconscionable for us to suggest that we should treat this thing lightly. It's a very serious problem. The pandemic is something that we have to heed with a great amount of diligence. The most vulnerable are those parents who have no means. They're at the poverty level. They don't have health care. So for them to send their kids to school and get sick with no health care is frightening. So they'd rather keep them at home in many cases. Now, mind you, we want our kids to be in school. That's where they belong. But when you're dealing with a disease of this level, it's not something you can treat lightly. We have to treat it with a great degree of care.
And as we've reported, New York was once the state at the center of the pandemic, but numbers there have dropped sharply over recent weeks. It currently has more than 400,000 cases, but New York reported only 834 new cases yesterday. According to data from the New York Times, the state has kept the total number of cases under 1,000 since June 7th.
And on Thursday, New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio said that the city is planning to provide free childcare options for 100,000 kids this fall. The announcement, it follows the preliminary school reopening plan, which includes both in-person and remote learning. According to survey responses, parents said that they cannot make blended learning work without childcare assistance. Mayor de Blasio said that they will use every conceivable space, which includes community centers, libraries, whatever they can find to create the space needed to provide care. Now, the service program will help preschoolers and school-aged children and will follow state requirements of only 15 children per room.
And we obviously knew this was an imperative. We've been trying to find every way to create new childcare and to build it from scratch, honestly, because we're having to create something that didn't exist before on this scale. And the goal will be to start by serving 100,000 kids and giving those families, those parents, that balance in their life, that relief, that support. But then we aim to go farther.
And Texas is one of the southern states that's found itself at the center of a surge in cases. The state reported more than 300,000 total cases, with many of them coming in the past weeks. On Thursday, the state broke another record high with more than 15,000 new cases that were documented. Leaders in some Texas cities, they've called for an increase in protective measures, but the state's governor said that Texas will not be shutting back down.
Last week, the Texas Education Agency said schools must reopen, and this week, TEA officials agreed to continue funding school districts if local health officials ordered them to stay closed, as long as they offer remote instructions for students. A petition started on change.com a few days ago is gaining a lot of attention, urging the TEA to close Texas schools down. As of this morning, it already has nearly 90,000 signatures. So let's bring in someone who understands educational needs as coronavirus cases skyrocket in Texas. Joining us live is Michael Bland, the principal at Lyles Middle School in the Garland Independent School District. Thank you for being with us today, Mr. Bland. So the school year is slated to start August 10th. And your district, which is the second largest district in Dallas County, said that the first 3 weeks of school will all be remote, online classes. But after that, students can choose to continue online learning or switch to in-person classes. So I have to ask, how do you feel as a principal about this plan?
Well, again, good morning, Jobette. Thanks for having me today. Our Superintendent, Dr. Rick Lopez, as well as our board, has passed a calendar that we refer to as an intersessional calendar. And it's designed to make sure that we address the academic needs of our students. For the first 3 weeks of our school year, we'll start remotely, but we have weeks that are embedded within the school year that we'll be able to address those learning gaps, as well as address the social and emotional needs of our students as well. But so far as opening, we are very excited to get the school year started. Obviously, these are difficult times, but we have planned, and we have a comprehensive plan that will address the needs of our students, again, both academically as well as for their overall development.
Definitely. And as the principal of Lyles Middle School, are you taking any additional precautions with your students and staff there?
We are. Obviously, we're looking at our policies and procedures. We're looking at things like our arrival procedures, our dismissal procedures, the way that we transition through the hallways, as well as our lunch procedures. And those plans are in the works now. Some of them are in place, and we're adjusting some on the fly as we get things in place, like shield guards for our front offices, for example, or different devices and apparatuses that will allow for us to properly socially distance, as well as provide instruction to our kids remotely through various types of devices.
So on a personal level, Mr. Bland, how hard has it been to adjust since the pandemic shut things down back in March?
I think educators are some of the most resilient individuals in our country. We're used to change, and we wear many hats, and we provide services for students on a regular basis. So we're used to changing on the fly, but obviously no one could prepare for a full-scale pandemic. But at the same time, we've been trained in order to make sure that the safety and security of our students are first and foremost, and then we also meeting the educational needs. So the difficult part has been just communication, for example, getting a clear pathway to open school safely. And that's been kind of difficult, and getting caught in between some of the political aspects of school reopening has been difficult as well.
Definitely, I can see that because you can't really meet face to face, right? And you're having to communicate over phone calls and Zoom meetings, and I can see how that can be a challenge. As a principal, though, is there any challenge in particular that you've faced?
Well, the fact that I can't see my staff and students, obviously that's been difficult for me. Most of us are also having issues with communicating with our school communities. I mean, there's a lot of displaced families right now, and families are going through various hardships that doesn't allow for them to be contacted, for example, and being able to keep those lines of communication open is critical to the start of the school year and, for the start of a successful school year. So those are some of the things that we've been able to address, but at the same time, it's made our job a little bit difficult this year.
Right. Now, not only are you a principal, a teacher, you're also a parent with one of your kids getting ready to start college out of state and then your other kid getting ready to start 8th grade. So what are your concerns from a parent standpoint about sending your kids back to school amid the pandemic?
Yes, I have a daughter who will be a freshman in North Carolina. She's going to attend North Carolina A&T. Obviously the distance from here, from Texas to there is an issue just right off the bat. But the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty and unknowns, that's been difficult. My son, again, like he'll start 8th grade here, but he'll be remote as well this school year. So, the safety and security of our campus, as I said, was first and foremost, but knowing that that's also a priority for other educators around the country is a concern, I'm sure, even for educators who have children. So just making sure that my children understand and know proper policies, procedures, protocols, and what to do in the midst of a crisis. My wife and I front loaded them with that information. So all we can do is pray and hope that those things are fundamental in all that they do, and they'll go out and flourish in the educational setting despite some of the hardships that are taking place.
Definitely. And I'm glad you pointed that out because it does start at home, right? The parents should be talking to their kids and prepping them for what's to come. Yes, we have the educators and government officials telling us what we need to do, but it does start within the home. So that's good you pointed out that you're talking to your kids and you're prepping them. One last question here. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, he hinted that more changes are likely coming to the state's guidance on reopening schools. Is there anything else you would want the governor to do or see the governor take action in?
Right. I know these are difficult times for any leader, myself included, and I understand some of the demands and constraints that are placed on leaders from the top. Partisan politics, there's no room for that when it comes to the safety and security of students and making sure that they're properly educated. But at the same time, we have a leadership void in our country, and I think that sound leadership is something that everyone is looking for. So all we can do at this time is band together as local citizens and support our officials that are leading us, but at the same time we also have to do for self. So it's a difficult job again at the very top, but at the same time we're all in this together. So hopefully we can make a collective decision to make sure that we open schools safely and move on with our school year.
Absolutely. All right, Michael Bland, principal of Lyles Middle School in Dallas County, Texas. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I have no problem with giving my opinion, but paying me to do a partnership or a campaign to get behind a certain candidate, I would shy away from.
So apart from creating a water droplet ballet, scientists have also found a new way to harvest energy.